Donald, get linked up with our offshore bank accounts as soon as possible.
Well, you didn't bring me along because I look like the black nerd from Die Hard. Because I don't, Roger. I'm sick of it.
We are talking about the action comedy Game Over Man. This one directed by Kyle Newacek and actually written by Anders Holm, who actually stars as one of our three principal characters. The most recognisable at the main cast for me was Adam Devine. I've seen him in a few kind of comedy things. The other two guys, I'll be honest with you, I'm not familiar with. It essentially focuses on this trio of kind of hotel workers that kind of go and change the sheets and all of that, maids, I guess you would call them, male maids. And anyway, they're working in this kind of hotel, they're all friends, and they have these kind of big ideas. They're all kind of stuck in a rut. And this hotel is actually very much like Die Hard, like this movie that it parodies. It's kind of overtaken by a gang of criminals who want to extort this kind of very rich guest into giving them loads of money. And it's up to our three inept heroes to attempt to save the day. So what do we think of Game Over Man? Certainly, if you were to class this as a action comedy, the emphasis is much more on the comedy. This is really close to a spoof in regards to its tone. Now, comedy by its very nature is subjective, and certain people will like certain styles of comedy. Some people won't like certain styles of comedy. So it's hard to review in a way, because what's something that I might find funny, you might not think is very funny, and vice versa. For me personally though, I thought the humour was very broad here and very kind of a juvenile style of comedy. There are some jokes that do hit, but for me a lot of them kind of fell flat and ended up being, they reminded me of recent Adam Sandler films basically. So that to me is a comparable kind of style of humour. If you like the kind of like the you know, things like The Ridiculous Six, which is on Netflix, just like this movie, then I feel that's a kind of a comparable movie, that kind of style of humour. There are a few jokes that do hit, and obviously it kind of being very much a spoof on the Die Hard, there's a kind of a few nods to that movie, so it's a kind of appreciated along with a few other action, you know, kind of like movies as well. One thing I wasn't quite prepared for was a level of violence in this film. I thought this being kind of an action comedy, it would be more a kind of a light-hearted, but there is actually some fair amount of violence and quite a lot of gore here. I mean, we even get one guy literally having his face sliced off in a salami slicer, and slices of his face. What you would see in kind of an R-rated horror film, what you'll see in this kind of movie, among a variety of other kind of like gruesome deaths as well. So I was surprised by the level of gore in this film and the level of violence. And if you are a kind of a gore hound, you'll probably like it for that. So I kind of appreciate this weird sort of juxtaposition that it had. The characters, the three main characters to me, were all fairly broad kind of stereotypes, and kind of more or less had one thing that they did, very much kind of not particularly kind of layered characters. It's not trying to be a deep film, but the characters are very much types that you've kind of seen before. You've got Adam Devine being the kind of the loud, kind of obnoxious one. You've got this kind of like the techie guy who's this, you know, gay guy who's sort of struggling to come out, and the other guy who's basically a kind of a stoner, who was the one that wrote this movie. They're okay, but there's nothing too kind of like too thrilling about their sort of characters. I felt that they were more or less kind of one-dimensional. The baddies are quite fun, and there's also quite a lot of celebrity cameos. I'll use celebrity with kind of quotation marks because they are kind of B-list celebrities, but there are a few familiar faces that you'll see here. Joe McHale, Steve-O from Jackass, Shaggy, to name just a few. You will see a few familiar faces from the bad guys. You've got Neil McDough, who was obviously from Legends of Tomorrow and Arrow and Band of Brothers, and you've got Ronan Mitra as well, who is basically a British action flick who's been in a variety of action, and one-time Lara Croft for IDOS models. Anyway, so it's quite a fun film in the fact that there's lots of kind of action set pieces and lots of kind of explosions and death like that, so you won't be bored. It has a kind of kinetic feel to it. The humour is, like I say, hit and miss. For me, it was kind of more misses than hits, but there, I would say about a 60 miss, 40 hit for me. So it's, it's a reasonable kind of proportion, I guess. But obviously, like I said, humour is somewhat subjective, so some might find it really funny all the way through. But it's kind of a fun little kind of Die Hard clone. There's been so many of these, but not for a while, I find. So it was worth watching if you kind of miss Die Hard. Heavy on the comedy, maybe worth a watch. I'll give it a 6 out of 10. Have you seen it? What did you think of it? Leave me a comment and I'll look forward to you next time. Bye for now.